Well, joining me with all of his common sense, as always, is Tom Slater, editor of Spiked On. I like that you chuckled at that. Am I doing that?
You might have misread me.
I mean, it is extraordinary. I mean, it's the betting scandal story is the gift that keeps on giving, isn't it? I mean, once again, you've got a big story about immigration, and I do want to hear from you on this, because I'd love to know your reaction on illegal migrants queuing up in Calais, waiting for a Labour government, and also your thoughts on Julian Assange, whether it was the right decision or not for him to be freed to go and do this plea deal. Either way, give us a call, 0344 499 1000. You can send a WhatsApp to the same number, text 87222. Get in touch on X at TalkTV. Calls to charge at the national rate. Text costs one standard network rate message. Love to get your thoughts on both the migrant claim and also Julian Assange. Do get in touch. Let's get to both of those in a few minutes, Tom. But just in terms of the latest on this betting scandal, what are your thoughts?
I just think what a campaign this has been for Rishi Sunak. I mean, his one selling point, because he's never set pulses racing, but the idea was that he's a safe pair of hands. His operation is slick. They know what they're doing. Back when he was, putting out his own graphics on social media, Rishi, all that stuff. That was at least his selling point, was it was a slick kind of Blairite style operation. It's just gone to pieces from day one. I mean, everything from the going out in the pouring rain to the national service nonsense to the D-Day gaffe, which is people almost forgotten about now. In
No, they haven't. Voters apparently, I'm told voters have not forgotten about that.
It's easy to forget about it in the context of just the constant churn of the next scandal after another, I should say. And now this. And it's not to say that he's been dealt a bad hand. I mean, I don't think anyone could have led the Tory party in this election to victory. I think it would be almost impossible.
This idea that bring back Boris and it'll all be a completely different...
one might be better than the other, one might do slightly better than the other, but ultimately the writing's been on the wall for some time. That being said, to see him mess it up at this scale, and a lot of these are unforced errors, like the betting thing was kind of unforeseen, even though it doesn't reflect well on his running of the organisation.
But could it have been dealt with much quicker? Because we've even had people like Steve Baker, who's a loyal minister, who's clearly completely given up. I mean, from looking at a lot of his other postings. But basically saying, if it was him, he would go to these people. Did you place this bet after? Because if I was being accused of something like that, it'd be really, really simple. I'd say, well, hey, I wasn't in the meeting. I didn't have any of this information. I placed the bet, 2 days beforehand. Before you'd even agreed 4th of July. I've got bets on loads of different dates. It's my thing. I bet lots of things. If, however, you can't prove that and you're going, yeah, OK, I was in that meeting when you said it's going to be 4th of July, keep it stum for 3 days. And I went out half an hour later and put a bet on the date, the election. And in one case, it's alleged, put on bets, like a dozen or so different bets in different betting companies. Come on, if that doesn't say I'm doing something I shouldn't be doing, I don't know what does. Otherwise, you'd just make it one bet, wouldn't you? And you go for the best odds wherever it is, and one of the candidates has admitted doing this. Okay, but it's really, as Steve Baker was saying, it's a simple question. Did you do this with insider information? Then you're dead to me, basically.
It's been incredible how this has been able to run, despite the fact that, as you say, one of these gentlemen, Craig Williams, basically fessed up to placing one of these bets as soon as he was confronted by a journalist. You would think in that situation you could be clear cut. Other people might be proclaiming their innocence.
And we should, we've spoken a lot of times about due process.
Absolutely, and that's important to maintain. But you do think this scandal, I think, it's not necessarily just a scandal in and of itself, it's the mishandling of it. It smells bad. Even if some of this Rishi Sunak couldn't have direct control over, it does paint a picture of a government which has kind of given up and sees making a small amount of money on at the bookies as more important than maintaining their position. But the other thing is the ineptitude. Some of these people who have been accused, we should say, rather than proven, are like the campaign director, the chief data officer. The fact that none of them thought this might look bad. And the other thing that's got to be said is, if you're going to be slightly dodgy, shall we say, about it, placing £100 bets, they can't even be corrupt correctly. That's the thing I don't really understand.
When this first came out, I'm like, you're giving up for 500 quid. I don't really understand that. If you put £100 on, you get £500 back. You're basically up 400, aren't you? Is that right, or do you get another 500?
Was it really worth that?
I don't know. Either way,
empty your savings.
You want to add quite a lot of zeros and be able to go and buy your own island.
If you're going to do it. Pathetic, like everything the Tory government does. If you're going to be corrupt, do it properly.
Yeah, but this is it. And also handle it correctly when it actually happens. I mean, again, it's on the front pages again and again and again and again. But it's also extraordinary to me that a police officer has been submitted, and the other 5 police officers, again, insider information. Does no one have any ethics anymore. I mean, bearing in mind, one of the issues for Rishi Sunak is, of course, he came into power post the chaos of Liz Truss, and post the chaos of Boris Johnson, and the whole thing was, I'm Mr. Technocrat, steady pair of hands, I will uphold the highest ethical standards and accountability. But the first test of this during the election campaign, not appearing to do it. I mean, they didn't need to make it quite so easy for the Labour Party, did they? It would be nice for them to have put up something of a fight.
They didn't. And I think, but the other thing is, because some of this is a little bit on the naff side of scandal and corruption.
This is claiming for an extra bath plug on your second home in the MP's expenses scandal territory,
exactly.
isn't it?
It's not to say that it's not bad.
It's not even a duck house.
But it's not even a duck house. The problem is, though, is that when you're so low in the polls, when you've had such a terrible campaign, when everyone just thinks they almost feel more sorry for you than anything else at this point, it amplifies all of these things.
I hear this all the time. This is something a lot of people, and most of my friends are completely sane and completely outside of journalism and politics. And again, I knew that the D-Day was going to be an issue because every one of my friends got in touch about that. Go, oh my God, what were they thinking? And again, not even as a, these aren't people who stand up and salute and things. I mean, these people go, that's just wrong.
Dumb, and wrong, but it's also dumb. That's the other thing.
I've got two. Among my complaints about this, but it is extraordinary how many people who say to me, I'm not going to vote Tory. I used to vote Tory. I was going to vote Tory. But I do feel sorry for him. A lot of people are saying they feel sorry for Rishi Sunak.
Yeah. That's almost worse than being hated, I think. Because hated usually implies that you're a divisive figure. Some people like you, some people really don't like you. If people feel sorry for you, it's almost worse than being hated, I think.
And then you're into the scenario where you've got Keir Starmer. There seems to be, from the action of audiences you're seeing in these debates, whether it's never mind the ballots in the Sun last night, whether it's ITV debates, other debates, people are laughing at him when he says, my dad's a toolmaker. Your dad ran a factory. You had an Arga. They had an Arga. No one can claim to be. You went to a private school or a bursary and you had an Arga. I mean, sorry. Lick rope clean wit tug for Yorkshireman sketch, for goodness sake. But people are. So the two people, and you're into like Biden, Trump territory. Really? This is it? These are the choices?
They are terrible. And it's also, at least Biden and Trump is potentially humorous. I can't wait for that debate next week.
No, Thursday night.
These two, it's like watching a bank manager argue with a head teacher. Like, it's so dull.
You've nailed it. You've absolutely nailed it.
How is this the best that the two main parties in British politics can produce? I have no idea.
There is that, isn't there? Look, let's also talk about channel migrants. The Prime Minister last night was on the Sun, never mind the ballots. And let's just play that very short clip again, where he was asked about policy, and Rishi Sunak got on to talk about migrants in Calais. Let's listen to that now.
If I'm not your Prime Minister, you're all going to be paying thousands of pounds to upgrade your home, switch out your boiler, change your car, because Keir Starmer's going to reverse all the changes I made so we get to net zero in a sensible way. Those illegal migrants will not be on planes to Rwanda. They will be out on our streets putting pressure on public services. And, by the way, I can tell you now, they are queuing up in Calais waiting for a Starmer government so they can come here and stay here. That is the choice.
800.
Right?
800.
Yeah, well, that's what Sunak had to say. I have to say, about getting to net zero in a sensible way, by the way, you can't get to net zero in a sensible way. You can't. Full stop. You cannot. End of. But going back to what he had to say about channel migrants, queuing in Calais waiting for a Starmer government, do you think they are?
I mean, there is that report in the Telegraph where people have said that. But
these are migrants in Calais, basically saying we're waiting until we've got a Labour government. Do you think they're that aware of British politics? I think there are plenty of British people who don't know there's an election on July the 4th. The idea that some sort of, Syrian or Somali migrant sitting in a tent in Calais is going, the election date, the polls close at 10 p.m. We'll know the exit poll. I mean, come on.
I mean, it's one of those quotes that, it's certainly very useful to Sunak, whether or not that's the widespread belief there. But even if it was, even if this, it's the talk of the migrant camps that, I can't wait for Keir Starmer to get in because it's going to be a complete free-for-all. People have tuned this government out at this point. They don't believe anything that they're saying. And it's been fascinating to see them basically try to make the case, whether it's on this issue or any others. We've messed this up and let you down. But please let us clean it up.
Yeah,
we might not have done it so far, but we just need one more.
And the other side,
heave.
it just isn't flying, isn't it? It's interesting though. I suppose the Tories and Labour, at least people are talking about them instead of Nigel Farage for a change. Of course, we've got the Lib Dems also announcing social care again, but again, they'll know it's not as sexy a topic as people are going to be talking about in the pubs. Let's go back to Julian Assange though. You just heard a little bit earlier from Bob Ayres. He's a former US intelligence officer. He was very clear, categorically, no, he doesn't believe that Julian Assange should have walked free. He is, we believe now, a free man. He has certainly left Belmarsh prison. He's left the UK. They've touched down to refuel his plane in Bangkok in Thailand. Tomorrow we understand he will be appearing in court. And of course, they'll be about sort of 10 hours ahead or something in a Pacific island where he is, I've never heard of this Pacific island, Northern Mariana Islands, US territory, where he's going to appear before court and plead guilty to one espionage charge. He will be basically convicted and will be freed based on time served in Belmarsh, 5 years already, and then he will travel on to Australia. Of course, the Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese has led a lot of these campaigns saying it's gone on too long, regardless of whether you think he's guilty or not. It's gone on too long. He needs to get back to Australia. Our guest Bob Ayres said he doesn't think it's right. He should be in prison. He says the defence that a journalist could be convicted of the same crime doesn't hold.
Well, I just don't see how he can make that argument and not be concerned about where you draw the line, because of the fact that if you are a journalist who covers matters of defence, matters of warfare, what have you, there are going to be situations in which they end up publishing material which has been passed to them, which might previously have been classified. Now, people might say if you're a New York Times or a Washington Post, they might have been more careful in how they presented that information, but who is to make that judgment as to what is and isn't careful? I think you can make the point about the concerns about people having lost their lives as a consequence of these leaks. That's quite a difficult thing to prove, but I know that's something that's made a lot of the time. But on the flip side, if you want to play devil's advocate, some of the most damning material, famously the collateral murder video of 2 Apache helicopters
and the audio
opening fire, exactly, laughing as they killed not only 2 Reuters journalists as well as a series of civilians, it turned out. You could easily say that exposing that loss of life is important. So I guess
may save lives in the future. Exposing war crimes is absolutely the duty of journalists.
Absolutely, and you don't have to be a fan of Julian Assange, his methods, or even his worldview or his approach to all of this to recognise that we're getting into quite dangerous...
His bedroom etiquette in Sweden.
Indeed, but to recognise that we're getting into quite dangerous territory here. And I think also to say that, he's left with a slap on the wrist. Again, you don't need to be reaching for your tiny violin to say 7 years in the Ecuadorian embassy, 5 years in Belmarsh.
Well, there is the Ecuadorian embassy staff I've always felt the most sorry for.
They suffered the most.
As
in
I
all
said,
of this,
they did. No, they did. I mean, genuinely, apparently he stank to high heaven. Absolutely rank. But yeah, no. But this thing, I mean, his life has been pretty rough. And our guest made the point, well, that was his choice. He could have walked out the Ecuadorian embassy. But yeah, he was facing, and you know what US courts are like, he was facing basically solitary confinement for the rest of his life in a US jail. That was the choice. It's played out well for him.
And also from the perspective of, say, Britain, our own interest, do we really want to be a situation where whenever America whistles, we'll just extradite someone?
Yeah, that's kind of what we do. They don't extradite back. Remember the case of Harry Dunn. I mean, they're extraordinary.